Srivastava. Welcome to BB101, Molecular and Cellular Biology. The cell cycle begins with its birth from a mother cell until its reproduction when it is divided into two new cells. The cell cycle helps in replenishing the old cells and deceased cells and helps in healing wounds. In this lecture, Professor Srivastava shall explain the different phases of a cell cycle. Thank you.
All right, very good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, let me ask Siddharth, he is raising hand from some time. Siddharth, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Am I audible?
You're audible.
Yes, sir. The present video, we saw that the mutations in virus is caused due to error in copying the mRNA. But sir, in now as we see in news, every variant with every mutation, this COVID is becoming more and more dangerous. So, but if it is due to error in copying, why it isn't being less dangerous? I mean, it can be in both ways, right?
So that's why all the variants are not of equal, concern, right? So, like Delta really became very aggressive and was, of course, very rapid plus aggressive. But even Omicron so far has not been shown as if to be very aggressive. It's very fast, rapidly growing. So therefore, this may not always mean that a new variant is going to be always more dangerous than previous one. It also depends on where these variations are happening, right? For example, our current diagnostics and current vaccine, these are all primarily with the spike protein. Now, if you see something is happening more towards, replicases or nucleoprotein, then it may be something else will be more dangerous because then we may not have the correct modalities of measuring that particular type of damage. But nevertheless, I think I'm sure you are going to study about viruses a lot as we go along in the course. Right now, this is short glimpses that just to give you some interest of current, pandemic concern and some basic understanding about biology. All right, any other question? I think one more student has raised hand. Please don't raise too many hands right now because otherwise they'll only talk. There is no time to take the class. Put your question or concern in the chat. We will periodically take them. Okay. Let me start. Priyanth, I think you can just speak once more. Yeah. Please unmute and ask. Yeah.
Sir, have there been variants which have reduced effectiveness due to this error in replication?
All right, I think let's take all the SARS-CoV-2 and related to the this particular viral questions at the end of the class after the quiz is done, so that we don't lose time. But of course, there are some lot of interesting facts here for the viruses, and not every fact has been understood very well as well. And lots goes on with the recombination activities and the new variants which are emerging. So it's full world in its own with the evolution as well as with the virology which you need to understand. Nevertheless, we'll talk about these things towards the end of the class. Right now, let me welcome all of you back to BB 101 MCB module. We are going to talk about moving from the cell organelle to the cell cycle. And of course, in the context, we'll keep discussing about some of the cell organelle. Just briefly about the contents update. I hope by now everybody has been settled. Being the very first semester and in a new institute, in a new online mode of communication, we realized that all of you had difficulty of getting oriented and knowing all the resources. We have been sending the periodic emails to make sure that everybody can catch up on the same forum. And I hope by now all of you know that all the lecture videos and tutorials, they are made available. And in each of the video description, if you click on it, you will find a handout link as well as some of the Google form, which will have the query where you can post your queries, like many of these interesting questions which is coming here may be of the common interest to 300 people, and then we can actually take those here as well. So after going through the Campbell book and watching the lecture and reading the handout, what questions come to your mind, please do write there, don't hesitate. Now, today's outline, first we'll talk about evolution of cells, how cells have evolved, and we will talk about again some context of prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell cycle, what is the ordered way of cell cycle regulation, and if that does not happen, that how cell cycle get dysregulated, and even may result into disease like cancer. If some time allows, then I will talk about cell reprogramming. If not, we'll talk in the next class. So let's talk about the one interesting area, which is evolution of cells, right? Of course, evolution itself is a very interesting topic, but just think about how cells would have evolved from the, that original milieu when the environment was not very conducive and the actual life was originating, the cells were evolving, how the ancestral eukaryotic cell would have got originated. So I'll just, kind of show you various possibilities that people have tried to propose for this particular purpose. And endosymbiotic theory gained a lot of momentum in that light. This is one of the theory which is which gain prominence based on some experimental evidence which scientists has to provide. But idea was very wild. It was you are speculating something to the tune of billions of year scale, and you have to predict that what may have happened that time. So estimate is that almost 1.8 billion years ago, these eukaryotic cells would have got evolved, and the nucleus was having the nuclear membrane, and as you can see here, and now all of a sudden that environment which was getting more conducive for the aerobic respiration or aerobic environment, one bacteria, aerobic bacteria, came in contact with this particular progenitor eukaryotic cell, which is that blue colored one, which eventually got engulfed in the eukaryotic cell and became part of that cell. And that was actually became mitochondria. So mitochondrial origin is thought to be coming from a bacteria, which is an aerobic bacteria. Of course, that may sound a little wild, but that is one of the very strong speculation about the evolution. And also, like that entire environment when now one is thinking about utilizing aerobic respiration and oxygen, that's these aerobic bacteria coming in contact with these cells was quite natural thought. But how they would have came inside and got engulfed, that is still a wild speculation. Nevertheless, then thought was that from these non-photosynthetic eukaryotes, another bacteria came into the touch, and that bacteria had ability to perform the photosynthesis. Again, in the marine environment, there are a lot of algae, which you might be hearing, a lot of cyanobacteria that are there. So again, these organisms, they do exist, but one of those came in contact with this cell, which has already had harbored the aerobic bacteria, which is having the mitochondria now. And now chloroplast got evolved from this particular photosynthetic bacteria. So this particular overall series of events, which is you are just seeing, is of course can only be speculation, but there has been evidences which scientists has to provide to show that why they really got retained. So idea was that these type of bacteria, they found that environment of this eukaryotic cell quite favorable, and eukaryotic cell did not move them out because they found their activities to be useful for their own survival. So in this case now, like when we have the non-photosynthetic prokaryote, now when the this bacteria came and started helping for the energy requirements and the aerobic respiration requirements, which evolved as a mitochondria, that became favorable or symbiotic relationship for the cell, and that's why got retained. Again, over the time period, probably another photosynthetic prokaryote came into the contact of this cell and got engulfed and got retained, again with symbiotic relationship, which is mutual for both of them to have the utility. So now what we are seeing, and again, these are the figures from your book, that is known as serial endosymbiosis. It means the first endosymbiotic activity would have happened, which is linked to the mitochondrial development. And now the second serial endosymbiotic origin was for the chloroplast. So that's where these two organelles, even when we were talking in the last class, they have some peculiar characteristic, right? We do realize that these two organelles are not similar to other organelles. They have a lot of specialized features. And now if we look at, this particular left side, the bacterium which is having capable of oxidative phosphorylation, now we have, two membranes here. And as we have been pointing out, that there are possibilities of having double membrane structure only for these two unique organelles. So let's say this particular membrane comes from the bacteria, and the outer membrane comes from the eukaryotic plasma membrane. So because the plasma membrane is providing that environment, when now it can go inside there, so this become outer covering, right? So therefore this became the outer membrane coming from the eukaryotic origin, where the inner membrane is from the prokaryotic origin. So now the two membrane or the double membrane structure is having two type of composition. One comes from the prokaryotic origin and outer comes from the eukaryotic origin. And same being observed in the other situation of chloroplast when the bacteria is capable of photosynthesis, right? So I hope this gives you some idea that, now these are certain things which has been quite different in these two organelles. And while there are many scientists who did experiments to prove or disprove this theory, and there has been many theory which has been proposed, but one which has got the most favorable response is the endosymbiotic theory, which was proposed by Lynn Margulis, and she gets credit for making it more popular. And now based on several evidences, now we know that these two organelles, mitochondria and chloroplast, they have their own genetic material. They also have the cellular machinery for performing transcription and translation. They could actually replicate. They have the ribosomes, which are actually more of the prokaryotic origin, despite they are in the eukaryotic cell. So they have the blend of both prokaryotic and eukaryotic. They are very peculiar. And in the any cell, these are the two organelles which maintains their own status because they have their own genetic system for their own replication. So based on these facts, I think, we have given a lot of acceptance to endosymbiotic theory. And that is one of the interesting facts which can be again discussed further in the context of evolution when we come to that. Let me now recap a couple of concepts which we have spoken in the last class, which is linked to your prokaryotic and eukaryotic.
Prokaryotes are simple unicellular organisms that lack a well-defined nucleus for carrying their genetic material. They are usually a few microns in size and are one of the most ancient life forms known, from which eukaryotes are believed to have evolved. Click on each component to know more about them. Bacteria can be divided into two major groups based on the structure of their cell wall and thereby their response to Gram staining. The cell wall of Gram-positive bacteria is composed of mainly polysaccharides and glycosylated molecules. It is made up of a single 20 to 80 nanometer thick homogeneous layer of peptidoglycan. In addition, cell wall usually contains teichoic acid, which is covalently connected to either peptidoglycans itself or to plasma membrane lipids. Plasma membrane is composed of a bilayer sheet of phospholipid molecules with their polar heads on the surface and their fatty acyl chains forming the interior. Gram-negative bacteria have a more complex cell wall. They have a relatively thin peptidoglycan layer, around 2 to 7 nanometer, covered by a 7 to 8 nanometer thick outer membrane made up of lipopolysaccharides. Porin proteins are present in the outer membrane, which allows passage of small molecules across the membrane. Nuclear material in the bacteria cell is not separated from the cytosol by a distinct nuclear membrane. However, it is usually concentrated in a specific clear region of the cytoplasm called the nucleoid. The genetic material usually contains a single circular DNA molecule. Ribosomes are composed of proteins and ribosomal RNA. The prokaryotic 70S ribosome is made up of a 50s large subunit and a 30s small subunit, where S refers to the Swedberg coefficient, which provides an indication about rate of sedimentation of the particle. A motile bacterium propels itself from one place to another within the medium by rotating its flagella. A bacterial flagellum is made up of the protein flagellin. It has a helical structure with a sharp bend called the hook just outside the membrane, and a basal body containing the motor just below the membrane. To swim forward, the flagella rotate in counterclockwise direction. However, when flagellar rotation abruptly changes to clockwise direction, the bacterium tumbles in its place and seems incapable of moving. It then begins swimming again in another new random direction. Typical animal cell lacks a cell wall and contains several membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, ER, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, and peroxisomes. Click on each component to know more about them. An electron micrograph image of a plasma cell is shown here, clearly depicting the nucleus, Golgi material, lysosome, and mitochondrion. Click on each component to know more about them. Plant cells have a rigid cell wall and membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria, chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum, ER, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, vacuoles, and peroxisomes. Click on each component to know more about them. Mitochondria, commonly referred to as powerhouse of the cell, are membrane-bound organelles found in eukaryotic cells. They are responsible for generation of ATP to satisfy the body's energy requirements and are also involved in other processes such as cell signaling, cell cycle control, and cell growth. The organelle is made up of several compartments that carry out specialized functions and also contains its own independent genome that codes for mitochondrial proteins. Ribosomes, which are composed of proteins and ribonucleic acids, RNAs, play a central role in protein biosynthesis. They read the nucleic acid information from messenger RNA and convert this into the corresponding amino acid code of proteins. Eukaryotic ATS ribosomes are composed of a large 40S subunit, which binds to tRNA and amino acids, and a small 28S subunit, which binds to mRNA during protein synthesis. The subunit structure of prokaryotic and eukaryotic ribosomes differ from one another. The endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus are involved in synthesis, packaging, and transport of various biomolecules. The ribosome-studded rough ER is a major site for protein synthesis, while the smooth ER synthesizes lipids, steroids, metabolizes carbohydrates and steroids, and regulates calcium concentration in muscles. The Golgi complex functions to process and package macromolecules such as proteins and lipids for their export to various other cellular organelles or outside the cell. The nucleus is a membrane-bound organelle found in eukaryotic cells that is often considered as a control center of the cell. It houses the genetic material of the cell in the form of chromosomes containing DNA molecules complexed with proteins known as histones. The nucleus is responsible for maintaining this genetic information by replication and for expression of genes performing various functions. The nucleolus is mainly involved in ribosome assembly, after which the ribosomes are exported to the cytoplasm for protein synthesis. Lysosomes are found exclusively in animal cells for degrading any intracellular debris. They contain hydrolytic enzymes within sacs, which can digest and degrade any unwanted material when released. Peroxisome is an organelle containing enzyme like catalase that are responsible for protecting the cell against free radicals and peroxides. They also play a role in metabolism of very long-chain fatty acids. They have a single membrane and no independent genetic system.
All right, I hope that was a good recap of various things which you have been studying and taught. I'll just take now a couple of questions which were already in the forum which we had in the Google form, and we have tried to club the questions so that to save time and to not repeat. So there are a few questions which were based on the domain classification, that what is the basis. So I think these are, as we already briefly discussed, there are 3 domains, and there has to be some rationale about how to divide them broadly. So idea was to sequence them to look at their rRNA genes, especially 16 sRNA genes, and based on that, these 3 major domains have been decided. Now within them, the question mainly which was doubt to many of you was eukaryotic and prokaryotic we have been discussing, but what about this Archaebacteria or Archaea? So that's where I think few things which we briefly talked, and that has to be clarified again, that there are many characteristics of Archaea which is makes them closer to the eukaryotes as compared to the prokaryotes, and that's what something which you have to keep in mind, that there are some specialized proteins like histone proteins which is along with DNA, which is involved in making the chromatin. Those proteins are quite unique in the eukaryotic system, which is absent in the prokaryote, but those are actually present in the Archaebacteria. That is one of the important thing here. I think again some questions were raised based on the Archaea and eukaryotes. So same concept here. You have to keep in mind presence of histone proteins, which was quite important to make the nucleosome formation, and that was present in Archaea as well. And also the RNA and the protein compositions or the components of the Archaea and ribosome are much more similar to the eukaryotes as compared to the bacteria. So these are some of the important distinction point which you need to keep in mind, and these are the structure which are shown here for the ribosome, and the left side is about nucleosome. Also some questions were there based on why horizontal gene transfer is seen or why it was common. Given that time of evolution, if you think about the billions of year time scale which we are talking about, organisms have to survive by acquiring some characteristic, right? So for their own superior survival, it was possible to have the horizontal gene transfer, where it is the movement of genetic material between unicellular or multicellular organism. And you're looking at in which way some characteristics could be acquired by this type of gene transfer. So that is something which was happening, and one could see in plastid and mitochondria. Transcription, I think one of the students have asked about it. While we briefly talked about central dogma and the process, especially from DNA to RNA formation, that is known as transcription. But this whole thing of how gene regulation works, transcription, translation works, will be taught to you in some time. So please wait for it. As of now, for you, it is DNA to mRNA messenger RNA formation in the process of central dogma, that is known as the transcription. There could be reverse transcription as well from the messenger RNA to cDNA formation. So now a few questions were based on the gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. Again, the key differences which I had already highlighted was with the peptidoglycan layer, where the positive bacteria has much thicker layer, whereas the negative bacteria has a thinner layer. And I think this difference is good enough for you to keep in mind about the staining pattern also, which we have talked about, why the stain was removed or retained, right? So those differences we have spoken about. There are several questions which I think I have pasted here. Were based on the bacterial experiment. That what was the liquid which was poured, what was that media? Inoculation loop was dipped into which medium after sterilization, and how to culture the bacteria. So of course, some of these things are not so important to know from at this point of time, given that we are not going to emphasize about the experimental part. But for your general understanding and to intrigue your interest, we are showing that. And here, just for that purpose of knowledge, not for the exam purpose, what was being poured was the LB media, known as urea broth. The composition of that includes some of the peptides like tryptone and yeast extract and sodium chloride. It's like the food for bacteria, like you want them to grow, right, to provide nutrients. And then once you have provided this type of LB agar medium, then you have to also provide the right temperature for their growth, which is 37 degrees, and you leave them overnight. And once that happens, then you will see there are a lot of clumps being formed from the multiple bacterial growth. And now one could try to take one isolated colony, because you don't want the clump of colonies. So you take one isolated colony, pick them up, and then again further put that in a fresh LB media, so for the further growth. So this in general happens, and but this is more towards your understanding. Let me see if there are some hands raised I saw somewhere. Any student want to ask any questions? So Shubham, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question. Shubham, I saw your hand raised. Please unmute and ask question.
Good evening, sir.
Hi.
So I had a question that, like you said, the mitochondria and the chloroplast were initially free living bacteria, right? And afterwards they just came into the cell and became a part of it due to some kind of symbiotic relationship, right?
Correct.
And nowadays, if we see any eukaryotic cell, it will have a mitochondria, and we call it as a powerhouse of the cell. Why is that? Shouldn't there some cells at least which don't have that mitochondria? Because there should be some which haven't been a part of that symbiotic relationship still, even after 1.8 years.
That's right. So you must be 18 to 20 years old, and the time scale is very short for what we are talking right now, the billions of years of the time frame, right? So
Yeah.
So the evolution is, of course, as I said, even experimentally very difficult to mimic that part. But what is actually perceived here, that probably these are very favorable symbiotic relationship which retained, and that remained stable. Of course, it is possible that many other bacteria would have also got engulfed, but they were not of use of the eukaryotic cell because they were not providing energy or not giving photosynthetic ability, right? So they might have been thrown out as well by the cell. But this particular unique context was that it got retained and got stably retained. Now, as you have asked, like it may happen that over the time period, maybe some other organelle also may develop like that, but that, one need to really live for that billions of years time scale to answer that question. Nevertheless, these are a lot of experiments have been done to look into the origin of this type of unique organelle, because it is quite wild hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier as well, to assume that in a eukaryotic cell, some bacteria came and that became organelle, right? So this hypothesis of endosymbiotic theory did not get very easy acceptance from that scientific community. But again, lot of thing, including that RNA was more closer to the to the prokaryotic origin of bacteria, gave more confidence in this theory, and especially different type of double membrane structure, which were prokaryotic and eukaryotic origin. But to really see what is happening, it is really long experiments has to be done, and that is difficult thing to conclusively say anything in that regard. But as best to answer your question, one could say it is quite favorable because the energy requirements are there for the cell. Therefore, it has made a part of its own entity and has not thrown it out. I hope that at least satisfied your query, if not completely gives your answer.
Yeah, just
Alright.
one another question too, including it.
It'll be very quick, guys.
Like we are calling it the powerhouse of the cell for right now, but how, like earlier, how did the cell had like its power?
That's right. So again, that was the time when what is actually thought of, that was the ocean environment, the aerobic environment was developing, and many things were not surviving. So then maybe this is eukaryotic cells were getting originated. This is known as progenitor or the originating initial eukaryotic cell, and this got survived because it had those ability now along with bacteria to cope up with that and have meet their own energy requirements. So that could have been favorable, whereas other may not have survived. So this actually, in that random events which are happening, this one random event would have given ability to eukaryotic cell to survive. That's at best could be presumed, right? All right, Shivesh, your comments or question. Too many hands, very difficult to take right now. I think please keep putting in the chat as well. If something is not getting clarified in the chat, we can talk more towards latter part. But it takes a while to even ask you people to unmute and talk. Shivesh, do you want to unmute and talk? All right, well, let's move on and we will continue taking discussions. I'm sure you have very interesting points, which is, I really like, some very fresh ideas come from all of your discussion. But let's move on to the next main topic, which is about cell cycle. Because that is going to give us a lot of new clues about the cell division as well as regulation of cell cycle resulting into different complex disease problem like cancer. So cell division, as you are at least you must have heard about briefly, the origin of life. That it started from the single cell, and that continues with the very structured and ordered ways of regulated cell division, right? So I see a couple of hands raised. So Aryan and Shraddha, please ask your question in the chat. If you still want me to address something, I will talk maybe after this segment. Okay, so then let's take that time. Okay, so idea here is how this entire thing happens in such a structured way, and all the time it happens that the single cells, they fuse together, fertilize, and then now from that embryonic development happens from the 2-cell stage to 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, morula, blastula, gastrula, and reaching to the to the child development. Entire thing is itself is a very interesting topic which you will study in embryology concept. Right now, I think let's first recap some of the basic idea. When we talk about genome, when we are looking at all the DNA molecule in the eukaryotic cell or the single DNA molecule of the prokaryote, somatic cells are essentially the normal body cells, which is having no reproductive action, so non-reproductive cells. And gametes are the cells which are involved in the reproductive action, which is a sperm and egg, and they have half the chromosome of the somatic cells. So these are some of the concepts which you are probably aware of. It's just the refresher. So keep in mind somatic cells and the gametes. Now let's briefly talk about the cell cycle, because we'll be talking about this in multiple contexts. And just of course, understanding cell cycle and cell biology can take really a long time for even scientists doing research in that area. But for you to appreciate that, how different type of activities in the cell is being governed, we can just broadly look at different phases of the cell cycle. So it is having with the G1 phase, S phase, G2 phase, and all of this is actually known as interphase, which provides the overall the growth for the cell and makes the cell prepared for the mitotic event to happen, which is going to do the cell division, right? So what you can see here, almost 3/4 part of G1, S, and G2 together, that is only preparing the cell for the division to happen. And it's like, when you are going from a, very fast bike on the road, right? Or on a highway, and you just want to run fast, like you don't want to stop. That's where, only two things happens which can stop you. Either police is standing there, or there is some sort of, roadblock you see, which is going to have a speed breaker. So likewise, in the cell also, to control that cell regulation properly, there are different type of these barriers are there. And those barriers are also in the form of the protein only. These are known as checkpoints. So one is this particular G1 checkpoint, other is the G2 checkpoint, and third is the M checkpoint. So again, some of these things we'll talk more in this particular context, and that will give you idea that how the cell cycle is very regulated. So broadly, we have these, G1, S, and G2 phase, which together is known as interphase. And then the remaining part is the mitotic phase. Now, if a cell want to divide and mitosis has to happen, it takes much longer time for cell to make sure that cell have sufficient nutrient, all the chromosome material has become condensed and everything is ready for division to happen. And then only mitotic division happens, which, is going to alternate with the interphase or the growth phase. So there are three major phases here. One is the G1 phase. Second is the S phase, where the DNA replication happens or chromosome duplication happens. And then G2 phase, which is the last phase of the interphase. Then only mitotic phase or the M phase comes, where the daughter cells are going to have equal distribution of these chromosome material. And then cytokinesis happens, which is going to involve the cytoplasm to divide properly and distribute into different cells. So broadly, we will be talking about some of these events of mitosis and meiosis. When we talk about normal body cells to divide, that is under the mitotic division with the somatic cells. And here two daughter cells are produced, which is going to have the same amount of DNA, which is going to just continue the normal cell growth and the continuation of the duplication of the cell. The meiosis process will require division of the gamete cell, especially the sperm cell and the ovum cell. And at the end of meiotic division, 4 daughter cells are produced, which is having half the amount of DNA as the mother cell. So just these key points you have to keep in mind. And of course, we will clarify this more in the context of mitosis and meiosis. So mitosis becomes very important, like, you get an accident and you have now immediate blood loss. And, of course, the clotting factors has to play immediate role, but after that the skin and the again the cells has to grow to regenerate that, or even sometime damaged region, damaged organelle, damaged organ, all of that has to be replenished, and that is only going to be possible with the mitotic division, which is going to duplicate the cells. But this division has to happen in a very controlled manner. If it becomes uncontrolled, then that also results into a problem which is causing disease like cancer, right? You don't want that to happen either. And you want also that normal cells, the replenishment happen and the growth happens. And therefore, that is a very important activity. So let's just briefly look at some of the terminology which are associated with the cell division, which we'll be keep talking about them as we go along, because few things, like although we'll try in the lectures, in the quizzes, not to give you the things based on the terminologies too much, but at least few basic terminology, good idea to keep in mind, because those will help you to understand the concept better. So what we are looking at now, we are looking at these chromatids, and because we have to think about chromosomes, how that get condensed, or in the during the these division to happen. And we'll be looking at both paternal and maternal side of the chromosome, one coming from father, one coming from mother. So just to simplify that, I have shown in 2 different colors that these chromatids, these are coming from 2 different parents. Now you can see these are having duplicate, right? So in one chromosome you got these duplicate chromatids, and these are known as sister chromatids. If they are coming from the red ones which are coming together, those are sister chromatids, or the black one, those are also coming as a sister chromatid. Whereas now when you will see, like, when they start getting in a group together, right? So they're forming these clusters together. So now this is one is coming from the father, one is coming from mother, right? So now this particular activity is important, as we will talk about the the pairing of these homologous chromosomes. That will become important in the division when we will talk about. But imagine from these color coding, like how these type of chromosomes and chromatin materials, they are trying to come together, and therefore some of the terminology which is associated with them, if you use logic, it will become easier. Sister chromatids means the chromatids from the same particular type of chromosome which are coming. But when now the red and black are coming together, there are non-sister chromatids, right? So don't have to do too much routing here, but rather use the logic. These are non-sister chromatids, means they are coming from both the father and mother chromosomes, where the sister chromatids are the ones either only from the black or only from the red. So only from the father or only from the mother. So these are some of the basic terminology which will come to you again and again, but it's good idea to just use the logic and take it easily, for the next discussions. So yeah, so these are the pair of sister chromatids which you see here, and these are they're attached to the centromere. This is where the kinetochore proteins are attached. And then these are the two chromatids which we talked for the sister chromatids of the same chromosome. When they are coming from the red and the blue is shown here. Now these are the non-sister chromatids and forming the homologous pairs together. Yeah, and what is the example is shown here is the 2n equal to 6. It means in diploid phase there are 6 chromosomes there, and 3 chromosomes come from the maternal side and 3 from the paternal side, and shown easily to visualize in the blue or the red color in that way. These are the sister chromatids duplicated from the one chromosome. Likewise, this can also get duplicated sister chromatids, and these two are the non-sister chromatids. So we have discussed at least this part briefly in the context of difference with the archaea or the archaea and the eukaryote similarity. But this is the important place, like how the so much DNA content in the chromosome is getting tightly packed, and this is the place when these histone proteins, which is basic in nature, there are actually 8 histone proteins, 2 coming from histone H2A, then 2 are from histone H2B, histone H3, and histone H4. All of them, 2 each, means 8 of these histone proteins together attached with the DNA molecule, and they form the nucleosome, right? And these nucleosomes, then they are going to make the entire fibers of the packed nucleosome, which is known as the chromatin. And this chromatin is important as we are going to start a discussion about mitosis, that how the the mitotic event starts when this chromatin material has to become very condensed. So just to recap, we talked about a very large interphase or the growth phase involving G1, S, and G2 phase, a very short mitotic or the M phase. Within M phase, now we are going to discuss about some of the key events. At least some of you who were taking biology at the 12th grade probably have much clarity. Those who have studied till only 10th grade probably would have at least got some names exposure, but we'll talk some more for clarity now. So we have prophase, pro-metaphase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. These are the major stages or the major cell division going to happen for the mitotic phase. So I'll just take one by one briefly, and on my right hand side, these are the some of the actual cell images, how they look in the microscope. And while the left side is the cartoon representation of how these events are happening. So now, since you have already been familiar now the sister chromatid terminologies, now you can see like this chromatin material became condensed. Now when the cell is now getting prepared from interphase and moving toward the mitotic phase, now the entire chromatin material becoming more and more condensed. Now it has to prepare for the cell to divide into 2, and all the nuclear content also has to divide into 2. So this time now nucleoli getting disappeared and chromatin getting condensed. We are now going to see that each chromosome appears as 2 sister chromatids. Earlier it was just looking like thick material, but now it has started forming 2 different threads, which start getting more and more condensed. What we just saw very 2 distinct one is toward the latter part. Like in the beginning, it is all like one condensed unit. Slowly start making 2 different fibers, and then which is jointed at the centromere, and then they will get more and more condensed. And in the process, the centrosomes, they are going to move apart, and they are going to make the mitotic spindle to form. So the next phase, which is now cell is preparing itself to move to 2 different poles and want to divide. But before that happens, all the nuclear material has to align to the metaphase plate. And that is known as pro-metaphase first, the orientation part of it. The kinetochores, we have talked about it here. So microtubules, they are going to, if they're attached here, these are known as kinetochore microtubule. If they are not attached with the kinetochore, these are known as non-kinetochore microtubules. So these nuclear membrane, they have to start getting fragmented, and microtubules, they started growing to play the role for these chromatin material to move apart. And each of the two chromatids, now they have the kinetochore protein at the centromere. And these microtubules, as we just talked about, they are attached to the kinetochores known as the kinetochore microtubule. And again, on the right-hand side, you can start visualizing how this type of dispersal or alignment on the metaphase plate start getting visualized in the microscope as well. And finally, when this process getting accomplished, this is known as metaphase, when now we can see that all the chromosome material, the condensed, these chromatins, now they have assembled at the metaphase plate, which is equidistant from both the poles, because the cell entire content has to become divided into two parts. So each of these chromosomes, sister chromatids, now they are attached to the microtubules arising from the opposite poles. Next phase is known as anaphase. Now these chromatids were quite strongly adhered with the cohesin proteins. There's a set of protein known as cohesin, and they form the complexes. That is what it is keeping them adhered together, but they have to move apart. And that's where now some repulsion has to happen for these proteins to move apart. So in the anaphase, now you see the sister chromatids have to separate, and then each of them will start getting more condensed and becoming as a chromosome. So the cohesin complex is very much important for this binding to happen, and slowly this complex has to participate in the cleavage process to happen. And now these daughter chromosomes will move towards the opposite poles. Again, it is not one protein, it's a group of proteins, large family, when many of these cohesin proteins are involved in this process. And finally, once this particular entire thing got oriented towards two pole, now some cleavage has to happen in that one broad cell, so that now two daughter nuclei can be formed, and nuclear envelope can start reappearing here. And now the spindle microtubules, they get depolymerized. Chromosome is again becoming less condensed like in the beginning. And finally, now the entire karyokinesis or the division of the nucleus has to happen, which is getting completed. So this entire activities are very much happening all the time and very structured. And once this entire process of karyokinesis gets completed, then cytokinesis happens. Now we have to look at how the cytoplasm, which is in the entire plasma membrane, inside was the nucleus and nuclear membrane, that got divided. Now the plasma membrane still has to make that bifurcation. So cytoplasm also has to divide. That is known as the cytokinesis process. So this entire thing is, we are not going to go in much more detail than this much. This is just for your basic understanding that how from interphase and the mitotic phase things are governed, and key event which is happening from the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. With this, let me now talk to you about one experiment, which we will try to give you how these things happens actually in the real lab. And we are just trying to keep giving you the glimpse so that you don't feel like what we just talk is put in the textbook, and biology is all about memorization, which is not the case. It comes actually from the true evidences and true facts, right? Even in virus, now you see it's happening, but we have complete idea from where the sequences are coming, what are the changes are happening. So biology is also very much logical, right? It's not only mathematics. Okay, with this, let's move on to one experiment, which is how to visualize the cell division using high resolution imaging. And let me invite the head TA, MS Meher, to explain this experiment and show the fluorescent microscope setup.
Thank you, sir. And hello, everyone. So now I will talk about this experiment where using high resolution imaging, we observe the cell division in the cell. Let me share my screen. So the basic, the main experiment here we are talking about is to visualize the cell division stage stages of the cell division under the microscope. And there are different ways and technologies that are used for this. And one of them is by using the immunofluorescence technique or the fluorescence microscopy technique. The basic principle behind this fluorescence microscopy is that, as it is represented here using the schematic diagram. So there are various components inside the cell which are biomolecule proteins or DNA and other, as sir explained during his lecture. So those are considered as antigen, the cellular component, and against them antibodies are used. So antibodies are the protein, are the molecules which specifically bind to that particular antigen. So that means the cellular components, they act as antigen, and the molecules that bind to them, they are known as antibodies. So some fluorophores, they are attached to these antibodies, either directly to antigen or indirectly with a secondary antibody. So somehow you can say that with the antigen we are connecting a fluorophore which, on absorbing the light at particular wavelength, it then re-emits the light. That means ultimately the signal that will be given produced by this fluorophore, it will represent the expression or the level of or the localization of that particular antigen. That means we can observe the components of the cell using this immunofluorescence technology. So this way, we're using this fluorescence microscopy or immunofluorescence technique, we can understand the cell, we can understand the various stages of the cell, and we can also understand the dynamics of various components of the cell. So one of the microscopy technique that uses the principle of immunofluorescence is the confocal microscope. So now we will show a demonstration of confocal microscopy and various steps that are involved when we prepare. So as it is shown that the slides are prepared in this using this principle. So if you want to observe the cells, then the cells are taken and then the slides are prepared from the cells. So now we assume that the cells are already there on the slide and we want to observe them using the confocal microscopy. So let's have a demonstration of these various steps which are involved. Is the video audible?
And this is the microscope setup. You can see this is the main light source where from where the light bulb is situated and from where the laser come. And as you can see, this is the eyepiece, and this is the camera to capture the images, and this is the joystick controller to control the stage where we keep specimen, and this is the control panel from which we can change different objectives manually, ranging from 10x to 63x, and there are two types of objectives. One is air objective and oil objective, differing in their numerical aperture, and these are the coarse and fine adjustment to adjust the objective. And these, as you can see, this is the stage where we keep specimen or slides, cells which you want to observe. As you can, if you look at closely here, as you can see, there are different. You can see objective here, and we can change different objective by using control panel. As I changed 10x here, and you can change up 20x also. Like that, you can change objective using control panel. basically this plastic chamber is like to keep it is useful for to observe the cells with live cells. So this plastic chamber maintains the temperature and CO2 inside this chamber. So we use the CO2 cylinder to inject the CO2 cylinder into this chamber, and this chamber also helps to maintain the temperature. That helps us to observe the live cells using this whole microscopic chamber. And this is the Zen software. Using this software, we observe the cells using the camera which I have shown there. So now I am using 63x oil objective. So I need to top up oil on the objective. So you just take a drop of the cancerous cells which I am going to observe. So you just take this and put it on the stage very gently. Using the joystick, I can move the stage. So I want to focus on the slide, so I just move the stage using joystick. Now using the course, I will bring the objective close to the slide. As you can see, first I want to observe the cells in the eyepiece. To look at the eyepiece, I will use the fluorescence microscope. I will go to locate. So in confocal microscopy, you can take images in the z-axis. That means you can take the pictures at different planes, at different points at the z-axis, and you can capture the information that is present in every position. That means if the cell is a 3D structure, so that means in a chronological cell will be like this. So you can take the information from the lower axis to upper axis. So from the lower z axis point to upper z point, you can capture as many cells as you want, and you can actually to see information cell. So that is the advantage of confocal microscopy. Now I will show you the Z positions I have taken of cell. So here, as you can see, I have taken 40 Z points in a cell. So I am playing now. This video will show you that the images taken at every Z point from 1 to 40. As you can see, the video plays. It will show you the information at every Z point till Z position 40. If you see, in the gallery mode, these are my 40 Z positions from 1 position to 40 position. As you can see, this is a particular Z axis point at Z axis. So there are total 40 points, so that I can capture the information presented in different Z positions in a cell. So as you can see here in this picture, there are two types of cells. This is the mitotic cells, that is dividing cell. As you can see, in the dividing cell, there are presence of spindle poles and spindle microtubules, which allow the separation of chromosomes into opposite sides of the cells. So it is distributed to the daughter cells. And you can see in the surrounding cells, these are the interface cells, which are non-dividing cells, and the microtubules are well spread. You can see the difference between interface cells and the dividing cells. So in the dividing cells, there is a formation of spindle microtubules, and in interface cells, there are well spread microtubules.
now we had an idea about how the confocal microscopy works and what kind of finally result we are getting after analyzing our the cells, our slides of the cells using confocal microscopy. So this is one of the image that was during this demonstration. This image was captured. So we can see the cells. There are several cells which are at different stages of the cell cycle. As we can see that this cell is here. So the different colors here represent the blue color is basically staining the DNA. So the dye that was used for staining the DNA, it is fluorescing as a blue color. So wherever we see the blue color, it is representing the DNA. And the green color, this dark green, this particular color that is in the spindle. So these are this is for the tubulin proteins which are making the spindle. So this is the spindle, and then blue is the DNA. So depending upon, so from these kind of images and experiments, we can get an idea about the cells at which stage they are. So for example, this one, we can see that that it is the clear chromosomes, and these are very in the initial stages of the cell. It can be, so maybe prophase or interphase it is. And similarly, this one we can, as it was explained in the video as well as in the lectures also. So we can see that the spindle is completely formed and esters are at the opposite pole. And this is the completely formed ester. So looks like it is the metaphase stage of the cell. And similarly, this cell is also looking like metaphase. And but this particular cell, it is the two cells are we can see that they are separating from each other, and it looks like it is the end of the cell division. So most probably it is the cytokinesis stage. So similarly, other cell and these different cells, they are at in a different non-dividing state of the in the non-dividing cell cycle stage. And similarly, so this is one more stage which is being represented here. So now you guys, you can guess which stage it could be depending upon the your understanding. So as the poll also says the same thing, like which is the figure present in the figure number 4, what stage it could be. So as we can see here, this so depending upon the staining of the DNA and the microtubules, you can have an idea about the particular stage of this cell division. And so similar to these kind of experiment, further there is one more experiment that is done in biosciences department. So just to show you the utility of these techniques. So for example, here the similar confocal microscopy technique has been used to understand the different dynamics of various proteins involved in the cell division. So for example, here during this experiment, spindle proteins were stained. That means they were immunolabeled. For example, the alpha tubulin, as I showed, it is for representing the proteins of this spindle. And then again, the DNA is labeled, which is showing as blue. And these red stains, these are showing the centriole staining, which is the gamma tubulin stain labeling. So when we are separately observing all three images, so here only green is seen, only blue is seen, and then red is seen. But if we merge all these, all the images, so we'll get a complete image of our spindle, so showing the spindle microtubules as DNA as well as centriole. So this way, the localization of that particular stained or labeled protein as well as its expression can be observed using such techniques, and such mechanisms of the cell can be studied.
Thank you so much.
So that's all for the part. Thank you.
Right.
Yes,
and let's also thank Professor Dulal Panda, who is a very distinguished faculty member at Bioengineering Department, who has done very seminal work in the cancer cell biology area. And a student TA, Rishabh from his lab, made all the efforts of making this video and showing the slides. I'm sure students appreciate that getting this kind of views even in the your normal classes may not be easy to get in, but at least you got a clear idea that how these images could be acquired. By the way, we had a very close contest into 2 phases, but finally, the right one actually won with very slight margin for the TILO phase, right? Okay, all right, so I'll move on, and let me be a little quick now because we have to also start the quiz. So meiosis part is essentially in addition to mitosis, which is going to give us the common, more cells to grow, it's going to give us more variation for the offspring when, the new generation forms, how the sibling or even the children of the same family, they look different because of variation which happens during the process of meiosis. So broadly, what we look at, the green colored ones shown a haploid stage, and the pink ones is the diploid stage. What we are looking at the egg and the sperm, right, which is the haploid stage. After fertilization, they form diploid zygote, 46 now, and then mitosis event continues to happen, and with the ovary and testis, and again after meiosis, they became haploid. So this is actually alternate between haploid and diploid stages. Now, while mitosis we have spoken in some detail, meiosis I will only highlight the key contrasting differences, what you see. Now let's orient ourselves with this particular, simple example of this parent cell, which is having 2n equal to 6. And now what we see, the chromosome duplication happened in the prophase of the mitosis. It got duplicated, came to the same plate, metaphase plate, and then divided into anaphase and telophase, right? And that's where now we got 2 daughter cells at the end of mitosis, which is having same chromosome numbers as compared to our parental cell. So 2n equal to 6. In case of meiosis, now some key events are happening, which is slightly different than the mitosis. Although, so keep in mind, meiosis is going to have 2 different divisions, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. In meiosis 1, now we have the same prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, telophase 1. Only difference here is rather than looking at these individual chromosomes, now here there is, chiasmata going to form and chromosomes are going to duplicate in that form. So now these homologous chromosomes, one coming from the father, one from mother, they are going to exchange some material. And that is very important phenomenon. The recombination activity is happening. It means some genes from the red is moving to the green or the blue one, and vice versa. And that is where the variations are getting introduced, or the more of these changes are being created. Now these type of a pair of homologous chromosomes, they are going to form that static metaphase plate. And then they are going to separate further with the anaphase and telophase. This process remains the same. There's a major change happened with the chiasmata formation. Then this change happened at the homologous chromosome. They're getting lined up now, not the individual chromosomes. And then we are going to have the separation of these homologs during the anaphase 1 followed by telophase 1. And as a result, now we got 4 daughter cells being produced, but all of them are having this single N, not the 2N. So these are the major changes which we have discussed. Just to recap, we have talked about mitosis and meiosis. DNA replication happens during the interphase before mitosis begins. It also occurs during the interphase before the meiosis 1 begins. Number of divisions are only 1 here. A number of divisions are 2 meiotic events happen. Synapsis does not happen here. Synapsis or the chromosomes together, that happens in the meiotic division. And number of daughter cells being produced are 2, genetic identical. Whereas here it is 4, and they are going to form the haploid cells. These are essentially used for the normal growth and general repair mechanism, whereas the meiotic cells, they are required for the offsprings to be produced, and they introduce the variability which we see in different generations to move forward. We have a lot of interesting thing to talk, but I think this is the place where I have to stop for today. Where we have to start discussion more about the, our recapping what we have talked in the previous class, and we have to have a quiz from that. But just to, conclude here, when everything goes well, what we have been discussing in the cell division phenomenon, all that is required for our normal body growth and, the repair and the reproduction, everything to happen properly. The cell division happens in a very orchestrated manner. But sometimes, these normal cell division process of mitosis, that does not happen in the same way, the way you'd like to see, and that become very uncontrolled. So cell cycle become dysregulated. It does not obey the normal distribution rule, normal division rules, and that actually result into the tumors and cancer. And that itself is a big, challenging topic to work with. Of course, the more recently COVID has taken over every other problem, but cancer still remains one of the major challenge in front of us. And that will be quite linked when we will understand about the cell cycle dysregulation. We'll also talk to you about some more interesting experiments and how different phases from the GO, G1, S, and G2 phase, their involvement and the different checkpoints requirements, are all linked towards eventually for disease like cancer. I'll stop here, although as I said, I had planned to talk a lot more, but we will follow the timing so that if you have next class is starting 3:30, many of you should not get delayed for it. Now the plan is we are going to immediately start the quiz, which will be happening on the Moodle. 10 minutes, the quiz will get closed. I am available here online, waiting for you. Some of you who do not have class and would like to chat with me, please come back. We'll talk to you and make sure all of you have been answered before you leave. Okay. So I'm going to wait for you, but all of you can now start writing your quiz. Do not ask for extension of time. We will close on time, and then we will again, not mandatory, but some of you would like to talk to me and clarify some questions. I'll be happy to talk to you further. That's all. Good luck, everyone. Let's start the first graded quiz and enjoy playing the quiz. Okay. Thank you very much.